my fellow comic book collectors. You'll notice I'm not in my comic room. This is going to be a different video. This is going to be look at the hottest Silver Age books of the week. I'm only going to be looking at 5 books this week. My partner, Mark Allroyd, wasn't available this weekend, so this is sort of a spur of the moment recording. I'm going to wing this by myself. And but we're going to look at some cool books and hopefully see some cool stuff that you will enjoy anyways with and let's get into it with the first book on the list. I'm actually including this book because Mark isn't around. He always complains when I show this book. This is Amazing Fantasy 15, the first appearance of Spider-Man, and it's just a great book. Um, and it's one that I always like to track. I just love tracking this book and seeing how how it sells between week to week, because for me it is one of the biggest blue chips of the Silver Age, and that's why I track it. And it's really important to me for me to see how this book performs week to week so that I know how the market overall is performing. By watching these big blue chip keys, it's my way of saying, hey, well, okay, if this book, which we all recognize as being one of the biggest books for the Silver Age, is underperforming, then what does that say about the market? And that's why I watch this book. That's why I like this book so much. And let's see how it is performing. So there was a recent sale on Heritage. You can see all these are Heritage sales. This is Amazing Fantasy 15 from Marvel of 1962. In Marvel of 1962, it was a 4.5 that sold, and it sold for $40,800. Okay, that's with the buyer's premium. So whenever there's a sale on Heritage, there's always an additional 20% buyer's premium. But when people buy, they know that, so they already adjust for that when considering the book. So basically, you take that full price, that 40,800, and that is really what the market has chosen to value this book at. Well, how did that perform? Was that a good sale? Was it a bad sale? Let's see. So if we look on Go Collect, and we can see the past sales history, we can go into a 4.5 and see that Go Collect values it like fair market value, which is, a lot of people don't really look at the fair market value as being meaningful because it, can go up or down, whatever. It's just a ballparking by Go Collect. However, you'll notice that it says right here that the highest price for this book was $84,000. And you can see these peaks right here where it, hit, one sec here, where you can see that it hit that 84. It was averaging anywhere from 60 to 80,000. It was like during the height of COVID. And there was even an earlier spike back in May of 2020 where it just, it was a bit of an outlier spike where it had gone for big money. Well, you'll notice that if you follow the trend line of this book, you can see that the trend line would kind of bring you to maybe around here. Like this is actually still above that trend line. I would value this book at around, in a 4.5, around that 35 to 40,000 range, which is kind of in line with what this book sold for. Sold for almost 41,000. But you can see if you look at the sales history, like back in June, it sold for 46,000. In May, it sold for 43. It's like all over the place. And it's really what's happening with this book is it's really trying to find what that floor price is. So it's going up and down, and it's just kind of circling around what could be that floor price. And it probably is between, as you can see, 38,000 and maybe as high as 46,000. Probably it's going to be somewhere in between there is where it's going to kind of correct itself to. And, overall, if you can buy within those ranges, you're probably okay. Overall, this book will go up in the future. Um, there are 3,770 of these on the census, and 2,400 of them are universal blue labels. So there's a lot on the census, but there's a huge demand for this book. It is, as I said, it is the blue chip book for the Silver Age. And so now we're seeing kind of that, if we watch this week to week, you can see that kind of trend where it's in that range of 40,000. Okay, so the next book actually is another one that I was really interested in watching. It's similar kind of blue chip book. All the ones that are on this list this week are blue chip books, and these are ones that I really want to check and just to see how is the market performing. Well, there's a couple of things that were interesting about this sale in particular. This was a CBCS sale, um, which generally, when you look at the difference between CGC and CBCS, the grading, there might not be much difference in terms of grading. That a 7.0 CBCS could be the same as a 7.0 CGC, but the market generally prefers CGC and will generally give it anywhere from 20 to 30% more value just for that case. Whether it's fair or not, that's beside the point, but this is that case where, this price should be affected by the fact that it is a CBCS case. Um, and there's no restoration. There's nothing weird about this book. It is Spider-Man's first titled book. It is also the first appearance of John Jonah Jameson or J. Jonas Jameson, and it's John Jameson's first appearance, the Chameleon's first appearance. So, and Chameleon is the brother of Craven the Hunter, so an important character. So this is a big book for the Silver Age. But how did this number perform? So it's like a 7.0, and it sold for $22,800. So hopefully that's a good sale. We'll see. We'll see how that compares. So we go over here and we'll see. So we click on 7.0, and you'll see that the fair market value they put at $41,000. Now, I'm going to look at a couple things. These are CGC numbers, and you can see that there was a recent sale back in April, or is that, no, sorry, back in July 4th. So the recent sale of 33,600. And, during the height of COVID, you can see that was much higher. It was like 45,000. And now, or 44,000, almost 45. And then there was this recent sale on Heritage as well for a CGC case of 33,600. So how does this relate to the CBCS case grades? So let's look at CBCS. Okay, so CBCS, now you'll notice that they have the sale from Heritage here on the 18th it happened. And generally there just hasn't been that many sales to go by. There's the previous sale. So this is a record, even though it's a record that's lower than almost half as much as what the record for the CGC case was. But the only reason it's a record is the previous sale was from 2016. So it's really hard to say. But one thing we can learn from just these numbers in general, if you kind of ignore all the pricing that happens with CGC cases, is this book overall has performed very well. Like in a 6-year period or 7-year period, it has doubled in value. So that's a pretty good return on your investment, despite the fact that this book has been all over the place in recent years. We can go back to CGC again. And you can see, like, even if you take that same time period, even with CGC, like in 2016, it was around 11,000, and now it's like almost tripled. So very safe investment, even though it has these crazy spikes that maybe might throw you off and make you feel like, oh, this book is not a good book. Um, Personally, if I was investing in this book or buying this book again, I would be looking for it in this lower price range, around the $26,000 price range. You'll notice it has recently kind of popped back up, but the CBCS sale kind of hints that it might be overpriced at that 33,000 price. So I would say, doing the 20% rule, so knocking off about 6,000 off the price, the CBCS one should have sold based on this price, should have sold for 26,000, but it sold for, as I said, 22, almost 23,000. So you can really say, hey, this 33,000 might be overpriced, and it's probably a little closer to that 30,000 is what you would expect the CGC case would be. It sounds weird that I have to refer to it by the case. Personally, I don't really care if it's a CGC or CBCS case. It doesn't really matter to me. But the market dictates that it does matter. So we have to look at it in that lens. So probably I would say the fair market value for this book is in that $30,000 range. With the CGC case. So this price was a bit low, and it is something to be just wary of, like with these sales. Like this book still hasn't found its bottom yet. I mean, if you look at the trend line, it's still well off that trend line. If you follow the trend line back to 2002, it should be around like here, which is around 25,000. So it's just still well above the trend line. Now there are 4,702 of these in universal grades, and sorry, altogether, and then 3,315 are universal blue labels. So a lot on the census, a lot to choose from. This is a book that comes up fairly regularly. It is a blue chip though, and it's one to watch. Okay, number 3 on my list is Daredevil. So this is another big book, another one that's a blue chip from the Silver Age. It's Marvel 1964. Another nice, really, really great presenting copy. This is a 7.0 as well. So this is, the first appearance of Daredevil and Matt Murdock, and all of the supporting characters like Foggy Nielsen and stuff like that. Nelson. I always say Nielsen. Nelson. Yeah, Karen Page as well, his love interest. So this book, is a great book for the Silver Age. And this is a 7.0 and sold for $6,600. Is that a good sale? Well, let's take a look at the numbers. So 7.0, and you'll notice that there was recent sales within this last year of over 7,000. So this is a weak sale as well. There was a sale back in November of last year for 7,200. And again, you can see the same price spikes that we saw before with those during the COVID bump, where this book had gone up to $16,000. So this is more than 60% down from its peak. That's pretty scary. But if you look at the trend line, this book might even have more to go down. The trend line kind of would say that it would be maybe around like low 6,000s, maybe even high 5,000s. So I'm thinking it's going to hit the floor around that 6,000 mark, which might not be a good thing to hear if you you paid these high prices during the COVID bump, but it's probably a more realistic price. So just something to be aware of. this is still a strong sale for this book. And we see that there's a lot of sales, but you can see that the overall trend is kind of going down still for this book. You know, it went from 72 last year, end of last year, which is after the COVID bump. Then it went to 64, 66. Kind of thinking that that's somewhere around the floor for this book, but it might go down even further. There's a few things that could pull this book back up. There is a new Daredevil series coming out. There's also an Echo series that's coming out, which could help this book recover a bit more. There are 6,132 of these on the census, and 4,981 of them are universal blue labels. So cool book, very important one, $6,600 sale. It's a pretty strong sale. Let's see what the next book is. Another big book. Actually, I had a choice on this one. I wanted to show something a little different than, because I was showing all the same books that you see week to week, and that can get a little bit boring. I picked this book because it is a little different, but it is still a major blue chip key. This is Avengers #4 from 1964. It is a nice high-grade copy. It is the first appearance in the Silver Age of Captain America. So major book for Marvel. Captain America is one of the big characters from Marvel. Actually, in the Golden Age, he was one of the three main characters for Marvel. So for the fact that they brought him back in the Silver Age, it was really that they were trying to bring back some of their major legacy characters. So yeah, so this is Avengers #4. And actually, I gotta switch that because I have the chart here for Avengers 1. But let me just pull up the chart for Avengers 4. And this book, this Avengers 4, is just such a major key, as I said, because it is the bringing back of one of their legacy characters. And it's also the first Silver Age appearance of Bucky. Okay, so 7-0. And this might actually be a pretty strong sale. Let me just, during the peak, it was selling for around $4,286. That was in December of 2022. That's actually interesting because that's a little bit after when most of the books hit their peaks. Most of the books have been falling by December of 2022. So that's interesting that it kept on going at that point. But this book looks right on that trend line. If you look at the trend line, it looks pretty solidly right on there with that $3,100 sale. Yes, we got to kind of ignore this COVID bump. Okay, just ignore it because it is what it is. It was a crazy time. But you can see that this book has been kind of fluctuating throughout this year. Like it was like in May, it was 3,100. So same, it went for the same price back in May. And then it went up in May. A week later, it sold for 3,900, and then it dropped down again, almost $1,000 off on another heritage auction, and now it's gone back up to that $3,100 range. So just all over the place, from all the way from $3,900 to $3,100. So lots of fluctuation. It looks like it's trying to find that floor as well. And this is interesting thing about these books in general. What we're seeing is the market really hasn't found the floor yet. And it's really important with understanding the market, because once you hit that floor and it's kind of a solid landing, then the market can then kind of move forward and kind of, people, once they feel like the book, okay, it's not going to go any further down, then there's confidence that can be rebuilt into the market. And so that's what we're kind of experiencing right now, that there's that uncertainty and there's that bit of fluctuation where the floor hasn't really been determined yet. And we're going to hopefully see that resolved soon, because it looks like it's kind of getting, this one has a bit of pretty volatile fluctuations, but when it hits that floor, it's going to be much tighter in the numbers, like similar to the way this is, where it's like really tight in terms of the price difference between any two given sales. Just a really interesting one. There are 5,000 of these on the census, and about 4,000 are universal blue labels. So just a cool book. I would say it's in that $3,000 range in terms of what I would say is a fair value for this book. Go Collect says 3,200. I would sort of guess at that $3,000 range. So interesting sale. That was number 2. The next one is Batman 155 from 1963. So all these books were in that 1963 to 1964 range. And this is a really great one because this is the first Silver Age appearance of the Penguin, which is a major Batman villain. This is a blue chip key. And you can see that, Marvel books generally sell for a lot more than DC books. It's one of those unfair things that a lot of DC collectors always complain about. Well, this is no exception in that rule, because this is a 9.0 and it's a CBA, which means that it's a little bit better presenting than the average 9.0. And it's selling for similar prices or even less than what 7.0s in Marvel blue chip books are going for. So I think that's kind of interesting on its own. But let's see how the market is reacting to this book. Let's see how this book compares to other prices for this book. So it's a 9.0, and you'll see that this sale is a new record. So if you look at this trend line, it's actually quite strong. During the peak of COVID, maybe in here, like this is kind of this is like sort of this time period here is like where it's like in that COVID mark where it's like around 3,000 to 2,000. It's like all over the place. There hasn't been that many sales for this book, but what I noticed during the whole craziness of COVID was that DC books really didn't spike as much as Marvel books did. And as a result, in a way, they were kind of recession proof because they didn't go through that huge overvaluation for the books. So this is a good indication for DC collectors that in some ways it was a better investment than those Marvel books, because this is another new strong sale. And if you look at the history here, it looks like the overall trend is up. It's just constantly going up rather than that really volatile Marvel trend lines that we see where the COVID spikes are in there. Just to give you a sense of how rare Marvel books how rare DC books are compared to Marvel books, look at them. Look at the census on this. There's only 907 on the census. Just so much more rare. And compared to what we see in the Marvel books, which is around 3,000 to 4,000. So it just never makes sense. Like DC collectors are always lamenting that the Marvel books go for so much more, and yet there's so many more of them available. And this is not like some second tier character. This is a major character for Marvel, for DC. Penguin is we got the Joker, Penguin. Those are kind of the two biggies for Batman. And for him, his first appearance not to really garner that much money, it kind of makes you wonder. It seems like a very undervalued book. But what do you think? These were the books